all the details. Only Raveena ma'am can tell you. So let's start with the session. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. Over to you. Raveena ma'am, I guess you're on. Yeah, now it's
Okay,
on.
hi. So before I get on with this session, I'll tell you what the documentary is, because since it was brought up and I can completely understand how Netflix is the new thing, especially since we're all at home watching a lot of television or things on television. Is that right? Is that what all of you have been doing? Can some of you tell me what you've been watching lately? Right. Anyway, so I'm working on a documentary. It's not a movie, so I'll quickly tell you what a documentary is and how it's different from a movie. A movie, like going to talk about in the session today, is a piece of fiction, which means you have imagined it, or maybe something has happened, and then you imagine a whole story around it. You make up more things. Maybe something happened last weekend. Maybe you went to your grandmother's house and there was a big snake which had entered the house. That happened, but rest of the other things you build around it. You talk about how you had school in the morning but you did not feel like going to school, so you slept in late, and then you missed school, and then your parents were upset with you. So then you called your grandmother, you said, I'll come over to your place, and then you went to your grandmother's place, and voila, what happens there? There's a snake in the house. Then you have to figure out how you're going to get the snake out of the house. So that's how you write fiction. Maybe something has happened, maybe something has not happened at all, but you think of it, you imagine it, and then you write it. But in a documentary, uh, some things have already happened, and we just take what has happened and then you shoot it. You shoot it to show people who have gone through a certain experience, who have been impacted by the experience, who know about what had happened, and then we shoot that, and then we tell you a story through whatever had happened. The documentary that I'm working on, I'm not very sure if it's suitable for your age, but whenever you're older, you can definitely check it out and I will let you know what it's about when it's out. So thank you for your attention on that. Now, today's session, we're going to talk about descriptive writing. But before I get into descriptive writing, I would like to talk a little bit about storytelling itself. I'm assuming all of you have your books and pens. Yeah? Give me a nod. So I'm assuming all of you like writing stories and reading stories. Yeah? Can some of you tell me what are your favorite stories? Can I see some things on your chat? Enid Blyton. Someone says that she likes reading Enid Blyton. Charlotte's Web. Right. Dog Man. Okay. Good. So, what happens in a story? It usually starts with someone telling you that it was a certain kind of time, it was a certain kind of place, and they were around certain kind of people, and then something happened. Isn't that what we do when we come back from school, or when so you go out to your friend's birthday party and then you come back home, and how do you start your story? Don't all of us start with, you know what happened at the birthday party? Yeah, we all usually start that, right? And you go out somewhere, something happens over there, and you come back home, you have to tell somebody about it. What do you say? You know what happened last year when I'd gone to a trip, we'd gone to a beach, and then on the beach there were these big waves. I thought I'll go into the beach, I started walking into the waters, and then there was a huge wave which went over my head. Yeah, we say these things, right? Now that itself becomes a way of storytelling. Now, essentially, what we do in storytelling is describe. You're always asked to do this, right? Even in your English assignments, you're asked to describe something. So, let's take a look at the first slide that I want to show you. Give me a minute. So, this has the opening line of uh, Simran, there is something else. Somebody called 8 Anubhav wants to take control of the screen. Can I decline it?
Yes, ma'am, sure. Kids, kindly don't ask for the control. Ma'am cannot give you that. That's not possible.
Right. Okay. So look at this. The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play. So we sat in the house all that cold, cold, wet day. I sat there with Sally. We sat here, we two, and we said how we wish we had something to do. Haven't all of us gone through that experience of being bored? I'm sure you're all going through it pretty much every day. Right after your school, and you're sitting back and you're thinking, what should we do today? And that's the opening of a book called The Cat in the Hat. Have some of you read Dr. Seuss? Can you let me know in your chat boxes? The next one is Winnie the Pooh. Can I hide this? Yeah. Here is Edward Bear coming down the stairs now. Bump, bump, bump on the back of his head. Behind Christopher Robin. So what I'm drawing your attention to is how the writer has described the situation. Now, let me get into what I mean by describing and why that is important for the plot. Now, what is a plot? Plot is something that tells you that this is what is happening in the story. Right? What is the story about? The story could be about losing your pencil. Now that becomes the plot of your story. You could want to tell a story about anything. Can some of you tell me about what kind of stories you want to tell? What would be a story that you want to tell? Something that has happened. Horror, mystery. Can someone give me some examples for the same? Magical. That's very fantastic. A life story of a boy, of a drawing. Okay. Most of us also really like ghost stories, no? Do you guys like ghost stories? Some of you get scared, but some of you find it interesting, right? It's very scary. Or is it interesting? Even though it's scary, it happens to be interesting because we don't know something. The way something becomes really interesting is when you don't know what is going to happen. Is that why we watch things and read things? Because we are curious? Yes? Suspense. Someone is saying the word suspense. That's what a story does, right? It builds to a point. Everything that you're doing from the beginning is going to build to a point that then this happened. Like, let's say that you have wanted a big birthday gift. You wanted yourself a PlayStation. And it's your birthday month. Your birthday is on the 24th of this month, and it's the second of the month. You've been writing in your journal, your diary every day. You've told everybody. You've told your parents. You've told your friends. You've told everybody, I want this PlayStation. Now you're hoping that on your birthday, you end up having this PlayStation. And it's your birthday this morning. And exactly the way you wanted, you got this PlayStation. And you're so excited. You want to now plug on the PlayStation and start playing your video games on it. You plug it in, and then the power goes out. You think the power has gone out, but eventually you learn that there was a short circuit in the house and your PlayStation blew up. How sad. So, the whole time that we're talking about you playing with your PlayStation did not happen, but the whole build up to you actually getting the PlayStation means that that was the suspense, that was the twist. We've all heard those kind of stories, right? Where you're expecting something to happen, but something absolutely different happens. The Like that's what happens in cartoons, right? Tom and Jerry. What happens in Tom and Jerry? Tom wants to catch Jerry, but then Jerry keeps running, and Jerry does something else. Does Tom ever catch Jerry? Not really, right? And even if he catches Jerry, Jerry finds a way to get out. That's mostly what storytelling is. You create a problem for the character you have thought of, and then you either try to bring them out of the problem or you start giving them more problems and see what they do about it. Now, mostly we are going to talk about how to describe. How do you describe something? Now, if it is a person that we are thinking of, how would we describe a person? We would start with how they physically look, right? Can you give me some of the physical descriptions that we can think of how a person looks? How would you say a person looks? A person looks handsome. A person looks tall. A person is beautiful. A person has golden hair, blue eyes. A person is fat, strong. Someone has suggested the word smart. Now, smart cannot be a person's physical description. But if you're saying that they have a smart sense of dressing, which means that they dress very well, now that can work. Now, can we think of words that can describe a person's behavior? Now, when I say behavior, what am I saying? Is a person polite? Is a person rude? A person's happy, strange, cowardly, mean. Now, what are these words? These words are adjectives, right? And what does an adjective do? It describes the noun. And we were trying to describe a person. Now, let's say we pick your grandmother. Naturally, if it is someone's grandmother, they're old. They're probably a little weak. They probably have a shaky voice. Yeah? They're gray haired. That's a very good idea. That's a very good description. They have white hair. What else? How about we start describing an animal? Your favorite pet dog or your pet cat. How would you describe it? Furry. It could have golden fur. And then you're talking about how it's playful and naughty. That's with describing a person or an animal. Now, if we were to move on to describing a location, let's say the location is your classroom. How would you describe a classroom? What would we say? How how are the doors and the windows? How's the wall? What is the color of the wall? It's neat and tidy. Yes. It's painted purple. It's clean. It's airy. Someone's talking about a room being airy. What sense does it give you if a room is said to be airy? It definitely means that it's a little bit of a large space. There are probably trees around it, which makes the room airy. What would you say to describe a park? What would you see around a park? Yeah, there's a lot of green. There's nature, there are benches, there are lots of slides and swings. There are kids playing around. There are older people taking their evening stroll. There are people exercising. There are dogs running around. There are flowers. There are birds around. Yeah. And if we were to talk about the surrounding of a person. Now, if a person were in a room and you're watching this person, the person sitting in the hall and watching TV, what is the person wearing? That again becomes a part of your physical description. You can describe the surrounding around that person. The person is in the middle of a room which has a large television. There is a table in front of him. There are coasters on the table. He has a cup of tea and a plate of biscuits. And he's munching chips already. And he's watching some Netflix. All of this is description, right? Have some of you read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Yes? Okay. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is about a child, a poor child who wants to eat a chocolate. And around the same time, it so happens that there is a competition. There is a lottery sort of a situation. That's nice. Someone showing me their copy of Charlie and Chocolate Factory. Thank you. That there's a golden ticket hidden in chocolate bars, and children who happen to get this golden ticket get a chance to go and visit the Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Wouldn't all of you be excited to go to a chocolate factory and there'd be so much chocolate everywhere? Maybe you'd see so much of chocolates that you'd actually get sick of it. Now let's read the first page, the first chapter, a part of the first chapter, and move on to what I was trying to describe. So this is an excerpt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only one bed. The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. They were so tired and they never got out of it. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josine on this side, Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and this little Charlie Bucket slept in the room upon the mattress on the floor. In the summertime, this wasn't too bad, but in the winter, freezing cold draughts blew across the floor all night long, and it was awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house or even one more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in a toothpaste factory where he sat all day long at a bench and screwed the little caps onto the tops of the tubes of the toothpaste after the tubes had been filled. But a toothpaste cap screwer is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked and however fast he screwed the caps, was never able to make enough to buy one half of the things that so large a family needed. There wasn't enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potatoes and cabbage for lunch, and cabbage soup for dinner. Now, if all of you had paid attention and you were watching why I was reading this based on what we were discussing, describing people, describing a location, describing the surroundings. Who were the people? There were old people in the room who looked tired. They were weak. Yeah? Then the room was very small. It was so small for so many people. There was a bed, and on the bed there were already 4 people. There were already 4 old people. And then there were 3 more people. There was Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and their son, little Charlie. Then we move on to describing Mr. Bucket's profession. Now, can you think of professions? Can some of you throw in names of professions? Someone saying an engineer, a doctor, an artist, a singer, an author. Now, if I were to say that someone is a singer, how would I describe their morning? How would I describe their day? They probably wake up, drink some hot water, and start practicing their vocals. They would start singing. And if someone's a doctor, they would rush to the hospital to take care of their patients, right? A person's profession and therefore describing what are the pressures of doing this job are also a part of your description writing. Just the way Mr. Bucket works for a toothpaste factory, right? Now, probably in your classes and eventually you will learn something called figures of speech. Now, what do figures of speech do and how do they help us? Let's get into it quickly. Now, figures of speech help us describe something in a more beautiful manner, in a more interesting way. Now, I can say, for example, that I had a bad day, I started crying. Now, I can also say, I had a terrible day and I started bawling my eyes out. Bawling my eyes out? What does that mean? That literally says that I cried so much my eyes came out. Is it possible for someone's eyes to come out like that just because you started crying? No, right? It's not possible. But just makes it interesting. What does it explain by the end of the day? That I was crying so much that it felt like my eyes were about to come out because I was so tired. So those are what are called as, can someone think of what are they called? Idioms. Thank you very much. Somebody told it. Those are called idioms. Apple of the eye. An apple of the eye. What does that mean? That you're very dear to someone. Someone really likes you. Someone's really fond of you. Like your parents would say, my son or my daughter is the apple of my eye. Can you think of more examples like this? Yes, this work was a piece of cake. What does that mean? Do all of you enjoy eating cake? Is it an easy job to do? Yeah? If someone says it was an easy peasy thing to do, that's a slang. It's not usually used. It's mostly used when we talk. Someone suggested a lot on the plate. I have a lot on my plate. Spilling the beans. What is spilling the beans? Giving out a lot of secrets, right? Raining cats and dogs. Can it rain cats and dogs? Can cats and dogs be rained down from clouds? No, right? Exactly. But what are we saying? It was so loud and it was pouring so hard that it felt like it was raining cats and dogs. Now let's look at a few figures of speech and then we can probably open out to taking some questions. Now, the first literary device that we're going to talk about is imagery. As I was talking to you, imagery helps us describe images, and this could be what you're visually seeing, which is called visual imagery, which we have spoken thus far about physical appearance, uh, of what we see in terms of the background, the location, that becomes your visual imagery. Then there can be auditory imagery, which is what you hear. We always hear all kinds of sounds, right? You hear a bike outside, you hear a truck outside, you hear your mother screaming from the kitchen, you hear a baby crying, you hear vessels falling in the kitchen. That itself gives a different kind of sound, right? Then there's olfactory imagery, which is to do with smells. Smells are a kind of their own, right? There are bad smells. Oh, it smells like there's a dead rat in this room. What is that smell? Have all of us known what it smells like when there's a dead rat in the room? Maybe not, but it's again to describe that there is a bad smell, right? Then there is tactile imagery, which is to do with touch. The touch can be soft. Maybe the wind blows in your hair, into your hair, and your hair starts flying. The wind also gives you a sense of feeling, right? It also touches your skin. You kind of feel nice sometimes when the wind blows into your face. Yeah, exactly. You feel hardness, you feel softness, you feel hotness. All of these give you imagery. There's another one that we were talking about called simile and metaphors. Now, how do we use a simile? Can someone give me an example? Exactly. They're comparing words. They use two objects and then they compare. This is the same as. It is like. That is comparing. I ate this chocolate, but it was exactly like a banana. You're drawing a comparison, right? You're saying that there was a chocolate which was flavored like a banana, and you felt like you were eating a banana because of the flavors. So that is drawing a comparison. Can some of you give me example? Someone is saying as fast as a cheetah. If I said Usain Bolt runs as fast as a cheetah, what does that mean? You're comparing him to the speed that the cheetah runs at. As slow as a turtle. Yes. I said, can you start walking faster? You're walking like a turtle. That is drawing a comparison. Now, a metaphor is a little more difficult to get to because a metaphor then just assumes, it takes it up one notch from comparing and exaggerates. What is exaggerating? Can someone tell me what they know exaggerating to be? It means just making a big deal out of something. If I say that the king is fights like a lion on the battleground, then I'm drawing a comparison. If I were to give it a metaphor, if it were to be a metaphor, then I would say that the king was a lion on the battleground. You're calling him a lion, right? Another one that we are looking at, another one of the figures of speech that we are looking at is hyperbole. That's what hyperbole does as well. You exaggerate something. Let's look at an example of hyperbole. Can some of you think of what an exaggerated example could be? I love you to death. I died of embarrassment. These are all exaggerated, right? Can someone die of being embarrassed? Is it possible to die of embarrassment? Not really, right? You don't die. It just means that you are exaggerating something. You're blowing it out of proportion and describing it. Spring break will never come. Sometimes when you're at school, or maybe you have to keep studying for your exams, don't you feel like, I feel like this is never going to get over? Is it actually never going to get over? It will, no? You will write your exam and then it'll be over. But what do we say? I feel like this is never going to be over. Don't we say that sometimes? Yeah? Another thing that we can look at is something called onomatopoeia. You guys can write these words down. Why don't all of you write this down? Copy the spelling as it is. And we can quickly discuss what onomatopoeia is. Onomatopoeia has got to do with describing a sound. And if I were to give you an example, we heard it over here. Here is Edward Bear coming down the stairs, bump, bump, bump. Bump, bump, bump is not just the sound of him coming down the stairs, but it usually makes that sound, right? When a sound itself can be used as a word to describe. If I say, I fell down with a thud, that happens, right? When you fall down, a thud sound comes, right? Yeah? Yes? Can you think of other situations like that? Again, I'll share the screen with you again. Thud sound. Let's try and look at more example. What does a snake do? It hisses, right? That's the sound it makes. And we say a snake is doing a hiss. And that sound itself is a description. For example, splash, bam, babble, wobble, gurgle. Now these are words which also sound very similar to what happens. Clickety clank. When you have a glass and you hit it with a spoon, you get that sound, right? You get that clickety clank sound. Ting. Do we get that sound? Yeah? You get that ting sound? The bell goes off. How does the bell go off? The bell goes off ting. Yeah? Right. Squeaky sound. What would be a squeaky sound? Who squeaks? Mouses are squeaky? Exactly. Mouses are squeaky. All right. So this was a little bit about how we can describe something. And you can take down your prompts right now. Like a prompt is your today's activity. You can all try it at home and you can submit it on the Facebook page. And I will read all of yours and give you some feedback on it. I'm going to try my best to read all of yours, but please do submit. I would love to read all of them. So your activity for today is that you think of something that had happened when you were on a holiday. Describe where you had been. Describe who you had been with. Now, what I mean to say is that had you gone on this trip with your parents? Had you gone on this trip with your cousins? Describe how your parents look. Describe how your cousins or your grandparents, whoever traveled with you, looked, and what you did on your trip. Okay? Once you're done doing these things, at some point later, maybe when you're free and you don't have anything else to do and you feel like writing a story, read the story again and then make up more things. Make up things that didn't even happen on the trip and write them. Yeah? Okay. Now you can ask me your questions. I will share the screen again in case you want to take down the spellings of imagery so that you can look them up. And it's 5:47 now. At 5:50, I will start taking questions. So you can leave your questions in your comment box so that I can answer some of them and maybe we'll unmute some of you. I'm sorry I won't be able to unmute all of you, but we'll take some questions. Okay, you can text your, yeah. Divyanshi says she has a doubt. Okay, go and type your messages. I'll be able to take a few of them.
Raveena ma'am?
Yeah. Yes.
Ma'am, actually, you are the host, so you can unmute kids. Actually, I don't know how, but I'm not a co-host anymore.
Oh, okay, okay. So I'll be able to unmute then? Or I have to ask them to unmute? Okay, Divyanshi. Okay, wait. Let me try and unmute you.
Hello?
Yeah. Yes,
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask that, like, sometimes we say, like, hush. So is hush a kind of an I can't spell that,
Onomatopoeia. Say it?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Is that an onomatopoeia? Hush.
Harsh. Is harsh onomatopoeia? Harsh is not onomatopoeia because it describes how harsh someone's voice is, right? Like maybe a person's voice can be harsh.
No,
But
ma'am, not harsh, ma'am.
harsh,
Hush. Hush. Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
harsh. Harsh is an onomatopoeia. Very good. Hush is onomatopoeia because it's a sound as well, right? You say shh, and
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
where hush comes from.
And
Yes,
ma'am,
it's
for the snake, you said it's his, right? His. We say that it
his.
makes his. So
Yeah,
his onomatopoeia or is an onomatopoeia?
HISS is the
Yes.
sound, right?
So
Yeah.
that's an onomatopoeia.
This is onomatopoeia. Yes.
And SSS.
Uh, depends on what you're saying.
No, ma'am, for the snake only.
For a snake, it is his. It's not SSS.
Oh, okay, ma'am. So when we're sleeping, sometimes we say Z.
But that's only used as a slang. That's not how it usually is. No.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Okay. Next. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good evening. Ma'am, can you repeat the meanings of the literary devices? Like,
Okay. Let me quickly tell you again because some of you have again asked. The basic ones are we talk about imagery. Imagery just describes images. For you, just remember that it describes images. Like right now, in your background, what I see a fan, I see the AC, I see that you're wearing glasses, I see a door behind you. There are paintings on the wall, there's a curtain. Now, this is what I see in the image. That is what I'll describe, right? Now, over here, suppose the wind blows, then you can feel the wind, right? That's a feeling. That's also an image. That's what I was trying to say. Maybe once you're a little older, in your classes, you will definitely have imagery and types of imagery. And I gave you another one, which was simile and metaphors. As cold as an ice cream is description is describing a simile. A metaphor is a little more complicated because it assumes. I felt like I was eating an ice cream, or I felt I was eating an ice cream, are two different things. For some time, just take some space back, maybe look at similes first before you get into metaphors. It will take a little bit of time, but you will understand it. Then, what did we do? We did onomatopoeia, which are sounds. What we spoke about hush, shush, crickety, crickety clack. And what was the other thing that we did? What did I miss out on?
hyperbole.
Hyperbole. Hyperbole is when something is exaggerated, blown out of proportion. I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore when I entered the room that had a smelly garbage bin. Did you actually stop breathing? You did not. You were still breathing, but you felt like, oh my God, I'm not able to breathe anymore. I felt like the clouds had fallen on my head. Is it possible for the clouds to fall on your head? The clouds were on my head. Why would someone say that? It means that there was so much pressure on my head. I was so burdened with problems. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll take one more question and
So in which standard does imagery start basically? Because I'm in the second.
okay. Any more questions we have? Let me, somebody call, Disha wants to unmute.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes.
Ma'am, what is
Disha, you're breaking. Do you think you'll be able to type your question out because you're breaking?
Hello. Hello,
Disha,
ma'am.
type your question, please. You're breaking.
Ma'am, I want to ask that what is the difference between define and describe?
Right. Defining would mean that defining is describing, but definition that you always write, even in your science classes, your social science classes, in every space, is a description itself that is very specific. It is specific to that word. Now, if I say imagery, imagery is the description of a person, surroundings. That becomes a definition. It is a description. All descriptions are not definitions, but all definitions are descriptions of something very specific. Yeah? Does that make sense, Disha? Do we have any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. There are 5-6 kids who have raised their hands.
Who have raised their hand, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, right. I'm sorry I missed you guys. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Avika. Okay, we'll ask Vanchika because the other person's broken now. Yeah. Yes, Vanchika, tell me. Vanchika, I can't hear you, child.
Should we post our assignment?
Sorry, can you be louder? Where should you post? You will be allowed to post it on the Facebook wall, I believe.
Raveena ma'am, it has been changed to Instagram. Though if you guys don't have Instagram, you can always post it on Facebook. But if you guys can post it on Instagram, it is encouraged. So the deadline is today 9:30 p.m. So I will forward all your assignments to ma'am itself. So kindly put in your best effort. Thank you.
Yes, and do enjoy doing it. That's what is the point of this, that you enjoy writing this. I'm going to repeat what the assignment is. Some of you are asking me what the assignment is. I asked you to recall the last trip you took. Trip as in a vacation. Where did you go? with whom did you go, and you describe the people that you went on the trip with, and you describe your surroundings and what you did there. Yeah? Avantika.
Ma'am, can we write about a part of our trip?
Sure, whatever works for you. You can write about how you went on this trip with your parents, maybe, or your grandparents, and where you went and what you did there. Yeah?
You're asking about time.
Okay, ma'am.
You can, of course, write about a part of the trip. Let's say you stayed for 5 days and you only want to write about that one day. Write about that one day or about that 1 hour. Is that what you're asking? Yes? No. Did I solve your problem? You can't hear me? Okay. Prayag, tell me.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, they use the word right or it is called onomatopoeia or onomatopoeia.
It's pronounced as onomatopoeia.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Yashas, do you have a question? Hello. All right then. That is it for today. Thank you for coming. And let's read your stories, please. Yeah? Does that sound good? Let's read your stories today and have fun writing them. And hopefully I'll see you all again sometime soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Raveena, for your time. And guys, I'm unmuting all of you.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
you, ma'am. We loved it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Something.
Happy writing.
Ma'am, where should we upload our story?
Guys, you should upload your story on Instagram. And
Ma'am, how should we upload it?
you should just post your story from your account and just tag Podium School. That will make it appear on our feed also.
Ma'am, to write a travelogue.
Yeah, do something of story.
Ma'am, I have a doubt. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. If I can answer your question, I would surely answer your question.
I have a question.
Ma'am, I want to tell you something.
Tell me.
I have read
Ma'am, I have to tell you something.
and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach.
Very good.
Ma'am, I have a question. Question.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you,
Ma'am, I
ma'am.
have a question. Ma'am,
Yeah,
do we have to write a travelogue? Ma'am,
Go on. I'm listening.
ma'am, do we have to write a travelogue?
No, it's not a travelogue that I'm asking. As such, what I'm asking you is to describe your last vacation. The way I spoke about description. So
Ma'am,
describe. Yes.
ma'am, we have gone to Sikkim for 5 days. We have to write about all the 5 days.
No, you can describe one day. Maybe something happened over there. Maybe you were seeing something that was very beautiful and then something happened. Maybe you got a little lost on the way and then you had your own adventure there. Maybe you saw something. There was a fair that was happening and you bought
It should be a
really.
real story.
Ma'am.
It should be a real story.
Yeah, something that happened to you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have a doubt.
Okay, tell me.
What is imagery? Can you re-explain?
Imagery has got to do with how an image looks, which means that you're describing a scene. Whatever's happening around you, there are books around you, there are pencils, there are people describing how they look. That's image. Okay, thank you. Need to go. I'm going to end the call right now. Simran, I'm